All right, what is going on, guys? Monday Night Football, 2 games. We've got the Bears and the Vikings, and we've got the Falcons and the Raiders. Last game, not great. I think I posted something in Discord last night. The Raiders and the Falcons have the least amount of points in the second half than any other teams. So it could be a little bit of a pillow fight in the second half. But I do see some angles. I think there is some points scored. So let's delve into the game, talk about each one. I'll give you my best bets. I've got 8 of them. I've also posted 4 bonus plays in the Discord as well as 1 parlay already. So feel free to join the Discord. Link is down below. It is absolutely free. And subscribe to the channel. All right, so let's get into the Vikings defense. So let's go kind of your four main spots here. So wide receiver, Minnesota giving up a lot of receiving yards. 28th in receiving yards, 31st in receptions allowed, 27th in touchdowns allowed. So if you are looking for some TD plays, I think there are some Bears players that might get some touchdowns tonight. There's some Bears players that could have a decent day. I personally don't know if I trust Caleb Williams enough. That's my only issue. But I think guys like Mooney have a pretty nice day. I think Keenan Allen could have a very nice day. So there is some value in taking those. Move to the quarterback position. Minnesota, 4th in rushing yards allowed, 32nd in pass attempts, 29th in passing yards, 31st in completions. So it does set up well for Caleb Williams. Now it doesn't on the rushing side. That said, he blew him up last time rushing. So I do like his over 22.5 rushing yards. I like his over 4.5 rushing attempts. These are all lower than normal. We're getting good value, and I'm going to take that all day. Now to the tight end position, Minnesota 24th in receptions allowed, 22nd in receiving yards allowed. So could potentially be a good spot for Cole Kmet or somebody else, but they're 6th in touchdowns allowed, so I wouldn't take a tight end TD. Running back position, Minnesota very good against RBs, 3rd in yards allowed, 2nd in rushing attempts, 3rd in longest rush. So very good at stopping the run. That said, they do give up a decent amount of receiving attempts to the running back position. They're 25th in receiving attempts. So could look at taking DeAndre Swift, something along the receiving path if you want. Chicago side of the ball, Chicago 2nd in receptions to wide receivers, 8th in yards after catch, 4th in receiving touchdowns, and 21st in terms of longest reception. So they do a good job of limiting the wide receiver position. I think they will be all over Justin Jefferson today. I do love Jordan Addison to go over his 52.5 receiving yards. You can find for -120 on BetMGM. That is on our slip today. Quarterback position, they are 7th in terms of passing attempts allowed, 5th in completions, and 11th in passing yards. I really don't want to touch anything with Darnold in terms of his yards or completions or anything like that today. Tight end position, Chicago 12th in terms of receptions allowed, 19th in yards allowed to the tight end position, and 11th in receiving touchdowns. A play I looked at that didn't make the card was Hawkinson to go over his receiving long. I want to say it's 18.5. Bears are 19th in that category. It's about 19.83 is the longest reception on average to the tight end position. So that is an angle. Running back position, they have not done great. They're 29th in rushing yards allowed, 21st in rushing touchdowns allowed, 27th in longest rush, 18th in receptions, 26th in rushing plus receiving yards. So could look at Aaron Jones to have a little bit of a day. I do like his anytime touchdown. He's just had some issues with fumbling the ball. It doesn't make me comfortable taking any type of rushing yards on him. So my play in this game, I do like Minnesota -7. It's kind of weird. This line hasn't moved a whole lot. I think he maybe could have gotten a 6. So it is 7. I still like 7. Don't trust Caleb Williams. I think Sam Darnold and this team is really getting prepped up for the playoffs. I think they're going to have a decent day. I just haven't seen enough out of Caleb Williams to give me any form of confidence that they'll have some success tonight. That said, Minnesota, kind of a weird team, hasn't exactly blown teams out. They've gotten in holes early. Wouldn't shock me if they went down 7-0, 10-3 early and then made a comeback in the second half. So I wouldn't stress if you're betting them in that regard. All right, next game, we've got the Raiders and the Falcons. Raiders got some QB issues. It does sound like Aiden O'Connell will not play tonight. So we're going to have Desmond Ridder, a UC grad, a little hometown guy. Don't love Desmond Ridder, though, in the NFL. Not a huge fan. Does tend to make some mistakes and do some dumb things. Raiders defense, let's start with the wide receiver position. 16th in receptions allowed, 9th in receiving, 8th in rushing plus receiving. QB position, they're 16th in passing yards allowed, 24th in attempts, 27th in passing touchdowns allowed. So there is that. Tight end position, they are dead last in terms of receiving and receptions to the tight end position. They are 30th in touchdowns allowed to the tight end position. This bodes well for Kyle Pitts. Could look at his anytime touchdown. Running back position, they're 17th in rushing yards allowed, 29th in longest rush, 23rd in receptions, 21st in touchdowns to the RB position. Bijan Robinson's anytime touchdown is juiced to the gills. About minus 200 anywhere you look. So highly, highly juiced today. Falcons, for the wide receiver position, they are 30th in rush attempts to wide receivers. So they could do some type of gimmicky play. They are giving up a decent amount of yards to running back or wide receivers running the ball. They're 30th in receiving touchdowns, 29th in receptions to the wide receiver position. So that does bode well. Just don't trust Desmond Ridder. That said, they should be able to move the ball. Quarterback position, they are giving up a decent amount of rush yards. I don't think there's any Desmond Ridder props out there yet. I may entertain his rushing yards. Falcons 26th in rush yards, 26th in passing touchdowns, 12th in passing yards. So I do think Ridder is going to have to scramble for his life. That said, the Vikings don't exactly blitz a ton, but I think they'll amp that up today if Ridder is behind center. Tight end position, Falcons are 12th in receiving yards, 8th in receptions, 23rd in touchdowns to tight ends. Bodes well for Brock Bowers or Michael Mayer, depending on who you want to lean on there. Michael Mayer got a ton of targets last week. I don't think we'll see that this week, but he was heavily utilized last week. Running back position for the Falcons, they are 12th in rushing yards, 30th in receptions, 5th in rushing touchdowns allowed. So had a play on here that didn't quite make the card, and that was Sincere's over his 8.5 receiving yards, 9.5 on some books. You can find it 8.5 at BetMGM. Just didn't make the card. It's one of those that kind of took it off last minute, but I do like that line. I'm just not sure with Madison in there, like what that split's going to look like. There's just a lot of variables with Ridder behind center, so it makes me a little uncomfortable. But in this game, Falcons minus 5.5 is really hard to not take. I don't see them not covering this line. That said, I could also see this game being like 24-20. So I'm going to take a chalk down version of this line and a chalk down version of the over. I think this over-under is perfect. Like I said, like 24-20. I could definitely see it being right there on that number. Bears and the Vikings. I think Vikings win by 10. So I've got this somewhere like 27-17, somewhere in that realm. But this game's a little tighter from the over-under just because there's so many more variables with Desmond Ridder. All right, let's get to the best bets. Get you guys on your way here. First play on the card, we already talked about this. I like Caleb Williams over his rushing and rushing attempts. I know the numbers don't necessarily support this, but 33 yards last game. Just played them less than a month ago. He's over this line in 7 of his last 10 games. He's going to use his legs to try to create, some plays down the field. If they're not there, he's going to run. His rush attempts, he's over this in 5 of his last 10. He had 6 versus Minnesota last time. He's had 4 rushing attempts the last 2 weeks. So I do think he goes over this line. TJ Hawkinson over 42.5 receiving yards. Chicago's 19th in receiving yards allowed to the tight end position. Hawkinson, he's an elite level wide receiver. Now, I do like his over 3.5 receptions if it wasn't minus 164, but he's averaging 4.7 receptions on the season, a little over 6 targets a game. So I like him to go over his receiving yards line. Give me the Vikings money line plus Aaron Jones anytime TD. You can take this down to maybe Minnesota -3 if you want a little more juice. But Jones has had a rushing touchdown in each of the last 3 games. I know we talked about the fumbling issues. He's also done a good job catching passes, so I could see him getting a receiving touchdown too. Jordan Addison over 52.5 receiving yards. He's over this in 4 straight games. He's just looked absolutely fantastic and becoming a very trusted target for Sam. I think JJ, they're going to be all over him today, so should open up the field for either him or Hawkinson or both. Bijan Robinson over 3.5 receptions. He's over this in 5 of his last 10. We already talked about this. Vegas 23rd in receptions allowed to running backs. So I do think he has himself a nice little day here. Kyle Pitts might be the most controversial play today. Kyle Pitts over 27.5 receiving yards. He has been woefully under this line the last 3 games. Not even close to hitting this number. But we already talked about it. Las Vegas dead last in receptions and receiving to the tight end position. So I think he has a nice little day today. I could see him going for 40, maybe 50. And then last play here is Daniel Carlson over 1.5 field goals. He's over this line in 5 of his last 7 games. Atlanta is allowing teams to move the ball. I think even with Ritter at the QB position, they're still able to move the ball down the field. I think they're going to be able to run it a little bit, should be able to pass it, at least put themselves in field goal range. So I do like Carlson here to go over 1.5 field goals. So that is going to do it for me. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Join the Discord for free, link down below, and I'll catch you in the next video.